So if you want to see the recap for round 13 and how I did with the predictions, you can check the pinned comment down below, but I'm just going to get started with the games this week. Starting with the Tigers against the Raiders, the Tigers currently sit in 15th place on the ladder. Their form is 3 wins in the last 5 and their home record is 2 wins and 4 losses. They were also on a bye last week. In terms of the availability for the squad, Brent Eden should be back in the squad after suspension, and there's going to be no Api Coruscant or Stefano Utoikamanu due to state of origin. Now, in terms of percentage stats, they have a 27% win rate, 78% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 89.1%. Moving on to the Raiders, they currently sit in 7th place on the ladder. Their form is 4 wins in the last 5 and their away record is 3 wins and 3 losses. They won last time out against the Rabbitohs. There's no Hirawai Nera, Chris or Rapana this week, and Hudson Young will miss out due to state of origin. In terms of percentage stats, their win rate is 58%, they have a completion rate of 78% and a tackle efficiency of 88%. If you look at the players that are missing for the Raiders, there are some big names there. Hirawai Nera is a good sort of squad player. Chris has kind of been the go-to guy at fullback for them at the moment, and Rapana is going to be a big miss on the wings. So there are some big misses, and Hudson Young, of course, in the forward pack. But Api Coruscant is going to be a huge miss for the Tigers. However, the kind of form that the Tigers have shown the last couple of weeks has been pretty damn good. Like, Luke Brooks has really stepped up, and Wakeham as well has been getting involved. It's just overall been much better for the Tigers the last few weeks, and maybe about a month or so ago, I would have said this is an easy win for the Raiders. I am still leaning towards the Raiders, but it's with a lot more respect aimed towards the Tigers. Not in that, oh, it's the Tigers, therefore they should win. No, it's against the Tigers, who are on some incredible form, who are playing some really good rugby at the minute, and are showing teams that, you know, there is something to them. They're not just here to pick up the wooden spoon. There's actually been some quality in that team the last few weeks. So Api Coruscant was a big miss, but I still think that based on current form and away record compared to the Tigers' home record, the squad that they should have available on paper is going to be strong enough to carry the Raiders over the line. They've still got Fogarty in their control of the game, Jack White and being creative. Wolford is going to be, moving that forward pack swiftly through the middle. So I think the Raiders will probably be fine in this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Tigers give them a good go. So I'm going to take the Raiders to win 1-12 points. Next up, we have the Warriors against the Dolphins, and starting with the Warriors, they currently sit in 8th place on the ladder. Their form is 1 win in the last 5, and their home record is 3 wins and 3 losses. They lost last time out against the Broncos. In terms of squad availability, Freddie Lussick could miss this game, but Egan and Barnett could both be available. There are also no players on the Warriors playing in Origin, so they're good on that front. In terms of percentage stats, they have a 50% win rate, 80% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 88.2%. Moving on to the Dolphins, they currently sit in 6th place on the ladder. Their form is 3 wins in the last 5, and their away record is 3 wins and 2 losses. They also won against the Dragons last time out. Bostock could be back this week, but there'll be no Tabu Fidel or Gilbert as they're playing in State of Origin. And in terms of percentage stats, they have a 58% win rate, 80% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 87.2%. So for this game, I do feel like leaning towards the Dolphins is fair, and a few reasons for that. First of all, okay, well, one way of looking at it is you look at who's unavailable. So if the Warriors have Egan back in at hooker, great. And the Dolphins will be missing Tabu Fidel again. However, if you look at how the games probably should have gone last week, the Warriors against the Broncos, I feel, should have gone in favour of the Warriors. Now, I did make suggestions as to why the Broncos might not lose as badly as some people may have thought, is because of the players that they do have on paper. I still think the Warriors should have beaten the Broncos based on how many key players were missing, and they didn't. The Dolphins, I thought, would be a much closer affair against the Dragons, mainly because they were missing Tabu Fidel, and the Dragons would be performing a little differently with someone else running things. But the Dolphins won by a bigger margin than I expected. So, given that the Warriors didn't win where I thought they should have done, or at least put up a stronger fight, and the Dolphins won by more than I expected them to, and it's clear that the Dolphins will be fine without Tabu Fidel, given that Nikarima, Milford, Katoa and Marshall King will still be part of the spine, and they've got incredibly creative players. Isako is scoring points for fun this season. I still feel that the Dolphins are in prime position to win this game, so I don't quite see it being 13 plus because the Warriors will be at somewhat full strength, but I can see a 1 to 12 points. So I am going to go with the Dolphins to win this game, 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Titans against the Rabbitohs, and starting with the Titans, they currently sit in 9th place. Their form is 2 wins in the last 5, and their home record is 3 wins and 1 loss. They're also on a bye last week. In terms of squad availability, Sam Verrills might be back into the squad this week, but Tino Fa'asuamaleaui will miss out due to state of origin. In terms of percentage stats, their win rate is 45%, completion rate 77%, and tackle efficiency is 86.2%. Moving on to the Rabbitohs, they currently sit in 5th place on the ladder. Their form is 3 wins in the last 5, and their away record is 5 wins and 2 losses. They also lost last time out against the Raiders. In terms of squad availability, Graham might be available for this game. Might be, and Moale is a strong possibility to be included. Latrell Mitchell, Jai Arrow, and Cameron Murray will all miss out due to state of origin, but in this new case, Latrell Mitchell will also miss out due to injury, which is unfortunate for him. In terms of percentage stats, they have a 62% win rate, 76% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 88.6%. So for this game, I do think that the Titans will struggle without one of their key players in Fa'asuamaleaui. He's going to be a big miss. The Rabbitohs will also miss out on Arrow and Murray, who are big inclusions to the forward pack, and Latrell Mitchell at the fullback position. However, given that the Rabbitohs put in a strong shift against an in-form Raiders team that was at full strength, or near enough full strength, I would say that it's fair enough for me to still lean towards the Rabbitohs, even with the key players that they're missing. Also, if Campbell Graham is in the squad, that's going to give the Rabbitohs so much more attacking options, especially down the right-hand side, and not feel that they're kind of shoehorned to the left, which is their usual go-to. And Campbell Graham can get Lachlan Ilias out of a bunch of trouble with his just kicks into the corner. Graham can go chase them and try and win a few aerial battles there. So I still think the Rabbitohs are in prime position to win this game. The Titans have a really strong squad. They can do a lot of damage with the team that they've got. And, with Blake Taft potentially playing at fullback again this week, they might look to exploit his rust possibly, even though he played last week. He might still be a little bit rusty. His lack of experience, they'll try and target him all game. I feel that's what they're probably going to go for. So I think the Rabbitohs will be under it a lot. But I do feel that they've got enough skill in the spine with Walker and Ilias and Damien Cook through the middle. And he'll also want to prove a point after not being selected for a state of origin. So I do feel that the Rabbitohs have enough in them that they could kind of run away with this game. So I'm going to take the Rabbitohs to win 13+. Next up, we have the Sharks against the Broncos, and starting with the Sharks, they currently sit in 2nd place on the ladder. Their form is 4 wins in the last 5, and their home record is 3 wins and 3 losses. They're also on a bye last week. In terms of players available, CSC Vatalakai is expected to be back this week, and the only players missing due to origin will be Nico Hines and Blake Brayley, as he's in the reserves. In terms of percentage stats, they have a 64% win rate, 75% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 88.9%. Looking at the Broncos, they currently sit in 3rd place on the ladder. Their form is only 2 wins in the last 5, but their away record is 6 wins and 1 loss. They won last time out against the Warriors. Oates is the only expected player back this week. In terms of players out due to origin, there's Payne Haas, Reece Walsh, Selwyn Cobbo, Tom Flegler, Patrick Carrigan, who are all playing state of origin. In terms of percentage stats for the Broncos, they have a 69% win rate, 77% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 87.8%. One thing that I mentioned last week in my prediction between the Warriors and the Broncos was that even though the Broncos maybe would be handicapped due to the players that they're missing, if you look at the players that they do have available anyway, that includes Ezra Mam, Adam Reynolds, Herbie Farnworth, Katoni Staggs, Jordan Rickey, Kurt Capewell. So even without Cobbo and Walsh and the key forward players, they still have really talented backs that can penetrate a defensive line. However, that isn't going to be backed up by the usual forwards this week against such a strong defensive team like the Sharks. And I would also say that there were a few games that Nico Hines missed last season, and I think the Sharks actually looked fine without Hines. I wouldn't necessarily say that they were worse or better. They just looked fine. Like, it didn't seem like that big of a miss. Because Matt Moylan actually... he just kind of ran everything. And he was still pretty damn effective. So I don't think that Hines missing is going to be a huge miss. Now, Adam Reynolds' kicking game is going to be massive for the Broncos. Absolutely massive. But the Sharks also have quality players all around the field in key positions. And I think players like Kennedy and Moylan are going to run the show and essentially hammer the Broncos through the middle. And the Sharks will win that forward battle. It'll wear them down. They'll keep putting pressure on the fullbacks and the wingers for kick chases. You know, they'll keep hammering them all game, and the Sharks will be too strong defensively. So I don't think it's going to be that much of a disparity to say 13 plus for the Sharks, but I do think it'll be on the higher end of the 1 to 12 margin. So I am going to go with the Sharks to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Roosters against the Bulldogs, and starting with the Roosters, they currently sit in 10th place. Their form is 2 wins in the last 5, and their home record is 4 wins and 1 loss. They were also on a bye last week. In terms of players expected back this week, there's Warrior Hargreaves, Manu, and Tupou are all expected to be back this week, which is good for them. In terms of players missing due to Origin, that includes Tedesco and Collins. In terms of percentage stats for the Roosters, they have a 45% win rate, 74% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 88%. Moving on to the Bulldogs, they currently sit in 14th place on the ladder. Their form is 2 wins in the last 5 as well, and their away record is 2 wins and 3 losses. They were also on a bye last week. Fuatala Mariner is the only player expected that could come back into the squad that's new. Adokar and Pengai Jr. will both miss out due to Origin. Burton is also named in the reserve, so he is going to miss out as well. In terms of percentage stats, they have a 42% win rate, a 76% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 87.1%. So for this game, I felt it was all kind of riding on Matt Burton until I remembered he's part of the Origin squad. So we're not going to see him, unfortunately. And I felt that the Bulldogs could probably get a win out of this if Burton was available, because his kicking game against either Suaalii or Manu at fullback would have just been too much. Even though they're decent players, or they're good players, it just would have been too much. However, because Burton's probably not going to play, I think that's a huge let-off for the Roosters. So I think Luke Keary is creative enough, has a good enough kicking game that he can open up the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs aren't going to have that same kind of sting through the middle because they're missing Pengai Jr. and Jared Warrior-Hargreaves comes back in. Even though they're missing Collins, Warrior-Hargreaves is a huge addition to the team for the Roosters. I think overall, the Roosters squad is strong enough to put up a win, but they have been a little bit dodgy the last few weeks, as most of you will remember. Both in the same form, but given that the Roosters' home record is as good as it is, I'm inclined to lean towards the Roosters. There isn't really too much I can say on this game. It feels like two bad, unorganised teams are going at it, and it's just a case of individual moments. And I think we'll see some of those from Jake Averillo. We'll see some of them from Luke Keary. It'll be a little bit back and forth from both teams, but I think the Roosters will just edge this one. So I'm going to take the Roosters to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, we have the Cowboys versus the Storm. And starting with the Cowboys, they currently sit in 16th place on the ladder. Their form is 2 wins in the last 5, and their home record is 4 wins and 2 losses. They lost last time out against the Eels. In terms of players available, Tamalolo and Nanai are expected to be back this week. But in terms of players out, we're looking at Holmes, Cotter, Dearden, and Murray Tuolangi due to state of origin. In terms of percentage stats, they have a 38% win rate, 79% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 86.8%. Moving on to Storm, they currently sit in 4th place. Their form is 3 wins in the last 5, and their away record is 3 wins and 2 losses. They were also on a bye last week. McDonald and Jennings are expected to be back, but Munster, Grant, and Welch will all miss out due to state of origin. In In terms of percentage stats, they have a 64% win rate, 81% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 87.7%. There are a few things in this game that balance it out for me and make me think that it could be a fairly close fixture. Now, even though the Cowboys will be missing Holmes, Cotter-Did, and Tuolangi, I felt that last week they dealt with it quite well against an Eels team that I thought was going to batter them. Based on how they did against the Rabbitohs and how the Cowboys did against the Tigers, they dealt with it fairly well. So I do want to give them credit for that. Plus, they'll have Tamalolo and Nanai, hopefully for them, back in this week, which will be huge in the forward battle. However, even though the Storm are missing Welsh in the forwards, they'll still have players like King, Asifa Solomona, and Kamikamitha. Massive players. So I do think that, for me, it's a little bit of a 50-50 in the forward battle. But Tamalolo is going to be a big inclusion, and if he's not kind of lagging a bit from any issues, then it might lean towards the Cowboys. But looking at the creative aspect, Dearden is a big miss, so Drinkwater and Townsend will have to control a lot. They do have Reece Robson still through the middle. But if you look at Melbourne Storm, they'll still have Jerome Hughes running the kicking game. On top of that, in terms of replacing Cameron Munster, Nick Meaney is most likely going to take the 5/8 position, and he's already got, a fair bit of experience there. So I have no issues that he's going to be fine in that position. It won't be the same, obviously, because you'd always take Munster, but I think Nick Meaney will be perfectly fine. In terms of fullback, they'll probably go with Wishart or Anderson. I'm assuming Wishart, because I think Anderson's more of a winger, but we will see. Or they might go with someone completely different. I don't know. Maybe Warbrick. I don't know. But for me, that's unlikely. But they've still got players like Xavier Coates, Justin Olam, Remus Smith, Warbrick, that are pretty strong aerial threats. So if the ball gets kicked into the corner, especially on Valentine Holmes' side, they won't have his experience down there. They'll have Peteko on the other side, but they won't have Valentine Holmes down one side. And they might look to attack that side mostly. I think that's also Tuolangi's side. I think. So if it is, I can see Melbourne Storm constantly going down the right, which is also conveniently Jerome Hughes' side, typically. So that could be a very long night for the Cowboys down that right-hand side, or their left, Storm's right. So I do think the forward battle is going to be a bit 50-50, but I think overall Storm will have enough in their squad to come out victorious. In terms of my specific prediction, the Cowboys' last game and Storm's last two games have been the exact same score. So in keeping with that tradition, I'm going to go with the exact same scoreline, and I do think it is actually a fair prediction, if I'm honest. So I'm going to go with Storm to win 1-12 points. Finally, for this round, we have the Panthers against the Dragons, and starting with the Panthers, they currently sit in first place on the ladder. Their form is 3 wins in the last 5, and their home record is 3 wins and 2 losses. They were also on a bye last week. Now, in terms of players available for this week, McLean, Tango, Linyu, and Eisenhuth are all expected to be back. However, Crichton, To'o, Luai, Cleary, EO, and Martin will all miss out due to state of origin. In terms of percentage stats for the Panthers, they have a 64% win rate, 81% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 88.8%. Moving on to the Dragons, they currently sit in 17th place on the ladder. Their form is 1 win in the last 5, and their away record is 0 wins and 7 losses. They also lost last week against the Dolphins. In terms of players expected back, that includes Sewer and Moga, and Ben Hunt will miss out due to state of origin. In terms of percentage stats, they have a 25% win rate, a 76% completion rate, and a tackle efficiency of 86.7%. So, how do you possibly predict this game? Because you have the worst team in the league versus the best team in the league whose best players aren't available. Right. Let's start with who's missing for the Panthers. Crichton is a big miss. Who could replace him? Tango. That's a fair swap. Yeo and Martin in the forward pack are going to be huge misses. However, the Panthers still have Leota and Fisher-Harris available. No issues there. But Toto is going to be a big miss on the wing, especially for, carries and kick returns, things like that. But I'm sure it's somewhat replaceable enough. They've got Sonny Taruva. He's been fantastic for them so far this season. He's had plenty of carries. He'll be doing a lot more this week. So we'll see who else they put in to replace Toto. But I'm sure Taruva's going to have a cracking game. Luai and Cleary will both be missing. So who comes in? Salmon and Cogger, most likely. Edwards isn't the type to sort of fill in the 5/8 role. That's not really his thing. So I think in terms of spreading the ball, game management, game control, creativity, the Panthers will be lacking severely by not having Luai and Cleary in there. I do think individually, players like Mitch Kenny and Dylan Edwards especially can still dominate in moments in this game. And I wouldn't be surprised if Edwards comes up with 2, maybe even 3 tries this week. However, this is a perfect opportunity for the Dragons, who were almost at full strength if they weren't missing Ben Hunt. They'll also be missing Blake Lawrie. However, they have a bunch of big players, like huge players. I feel that the reason why this might be a good week for the Dragons is if you look at the forwards that they've got available, if you look how many big players that they've got in the team, they could absolutely wear down the Panthers. And as long as Sullivan and Amon's kicking games are good, if, the first 20, 30 minutes, they kick to the corners and get the wingers to return the ball as much as possible, get them out the game. For the rest of the half, hammer into Dylan Edwards and get him out the game for later on. You've got so many forwards that you can rotate. Just hammer the Panthers through the middle, and eventually you'll get some good field position and they'll be absolutely knackered. That is the way I see this going, and that's what I think the Dragons should be focusing on. Wear down Edwards and the wingers, and then as you go throughout the game, rotate, use the subs as freely as possible to just knacker the Panthers through the middle. And then eventually you'll get an opening through good field position, and I think players like Sullivan, with the kind of step that he's got, can find a gap against a few tired props in the middle, and he's through. And I think that could happen a couple times. And they can kick to the corners. They can test whoever's replacing Toto. They can maybe have a go at Tango because he's been missing for a little while. So, he's going to be a bit rusty. I think I'm going to lean towards the Dragons on this one. I think if even one of these players missing due to State of Origin was available, I'd then look to the Panthers. But I think there are so many key players missing for the Panthers. The Dragons surely have got to take this one. Even with Ben Hunt missing, I think there's enough in their team to do damage. But I don't think it's going to be much. So I'm going to take the Dragons to win 1-12 points. So to recap my round 14 predictions, I'm going to take the Raiders and Dolphins 1-12, Rabbitohs 13+, and then I'll take the Sharks, Roosters, Storm and Dragons 1-12. So that's going to be it for this video. If you have any predictions for round 14, let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know how you got on last week. There's also going to be some State of Origin content coming very soon, so stay tuned for that. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.